welcome back to another episode of the Lonely Liberal Podcast. I am your host, Nick Zankin, and I'm so happy to have you on this Wednesday. We got a great show for you today, but before we get into that, I'm sure that many of you, by the time this comes out at least, will have seen this news about Charlie Kirk, the right-wing political influencer, kind of advisor to Trump, and really just a socialite guy. He's, famous for debating college students and stuff like that, and, has become one of the kind of faces of the MAGA right-wing podcast movement. He got basically assassinated today on a college campus. I mean, we don't know the condition of him. He's in critical condition. Hopefully he's okay, obviously, but he got shot. And, there are videos online. It's disgusting and it's sad. And, obviously probably not most of you listening to the show, or maybe not, don't agree with anything that guy says at all because, he doesn't agree with me, right? We don't agree at all about pretty much anything. But that doesn't make this okay. This is sad. He has 2 kids. Political violence is disgusting and has absolutely no place in any modern country, any country at all, but especially not in what you'd hope to be a, modern Western democracy. And I know there are probably people out there going, oh, what did you expect? He's talking all this shit and stuff like that. Well, you should never be expected to be shot or potentially killed. I mean, I don't believe in the death penalty. I definitely don't believe in the death penalty without a trial. The dude was just voicing his opinions, and even though he doesn't have any opinion at all that, maybe any of us share on this show, that doesn't make this okay. It's bad. It's really bad, and it's a sad state of affairs for this country. It's depressing and terrifying, frankly, and, it's hard to even talk about this stuff because it just puts into perspective how, crazy people have gotten and how detached from reality we've all gotten to violence, how numb to violence we've become, and, where we are at a society where people, think this stuff is okay. And yeah, I mean, this is what happens when rhetoric gets out of control. This is what happens when access to firearms is out of control. I'm sorry. I know people are going to say that, but the dude got shot from hundreds of yards away. I mean, why do people own guns like that? But that's neither here nor there. Obviously, okay, we're going to have to do a normal show. I'm going to talk about the Dark Enlightenment, what kind of a weird topic for the show, but the most requested episode on the show. So going to act normal for that, but, how could you not start with this recent development? Hope he's all right. It doesn't look good from the videos, but again, we can only hope and put our thoughts and best wishes for the dude. So hope he's all right. Hope Trump doesn't immediately make this insane. We'll talk about this with Rick on Sunday, but hopefully this doesn't escalate even crazier. You never know as information comes out, but till then, we can only hope for the best for basically all these guys involved. Alrighty, so today's show is going to be about something called the Dark Enlightenment, or some people call it neo-reactionism. They're kind of the same thing. And it is probably the most requested episode that I've gotten so far. And if you're like, what is that? It's this Curtis Yarvin, Peter Thiel, kind of JD Vance tech stuff. And before we get into it, which I would have said normally if I didn't have to, monologue about this political violence stuff, is this stuff is pretty close to conspiracy theory. And it's not conspiracy theory, hence why we're going to cover it today. But I don't typically like to talk about things that are kind of just, meme adjacent, really unfounded gobbledygook, because I don't really want to stoke that fire, even though it's probably good for clicks. But this has gone a little far in the reality thing, to the point where now I think it's real enough that it's warrants kind of a look at and see what actually is going on here, because, you got JD Vance, the vice president, echoing some of the sentiments of this thing. So before we get into what neoconservatism is, or what the Dark Enlightenment is, we should probably figure out who these guys are. So the main dude that you'll hear sometimes, you're talking to a friend or on a news site or something like that, is this dude, Curtis Yarvin. This guy, he's just got his degrees, normal guy. He basically a software engineer, and he started blogging like 20 years ago, basically, 15, 20 years ago. And his blogs got pretty popular. And his blogs kind of put together this idea, which is called kind of neo-reactionism. And it's at a very high level way to explain it is that, there's this academic elite class, and they're kind of brainwashing the masses to think something like this. And really, this is killing democracy, and democracy is dead. So therefore, we need to kind of scrap democracy and kind of go to like a Singaporean, like city-state kind of government model, basically. So that was called neo-reactionism. Then this dude, Nick Land, this British guy, he basically took this theory and all these kind of sub-thoughts in this bucket and called it the Dark Enlightenment. And in that bucket is this dude, Peter Thiel, right? And he's famous because he's a big tech bro guy. He co-founded PayPal with Elon Musk, but now he's really famous for Palantir, the kind of a tracking software that the U.S. government works. And he's also been somebody that has said some pretty ominous stuff in interviews. So he's in this bucket. And by extension, J.D. Vance is also in this bucket. So we'll get more into this in a bit, but those are kind of the main players. There's a few other tech bro guys, but those are the main dudes. So let's talk about this kind of neo-reactionism doctrine. Like, what do they actually think? And like I said, they basically want to turn government into a company, I could say, or they call it CEO state. So what is that? It's basically saying all meritocracy, all kind of executive authority. It's basically like a benevolent dictator model in their eyes, I guess. Again, I think Singapore is probably the closest modern example of something that they're trying to describe. How would that look like in the U.S.? I don't know. Maybe every city is its own government. That's kind of what it says. And again, the reason why they think that this is the way the government should be run is because they think that, A, people are stupid and people can't be trusted with a vote. And the reason why they're stupid is because basically the media and academia world, which they call the Cathedral, has basically made everyone just so dumb and so brainwashed to believe whatever, we believe, that they're so far gone that we need to kind of scrap it, like I said. Again, that... And another part of the story, and again, I'm a little rambly here, because again, this idea is kind of loosely thread together. It's not really like this super coherent thought. Again, it's like borderline ridiculous that this is even a conversation. One thing that they talk about a lot, too, is that the president isn't there long enough. That's kind of another reason why they're liking dictatorship. They have the opposite view that a lot of people you probably know think, which is that the longer you're in politics, the more corrupt you could become, which, by the way, isn't always necessarily true. I mean, look at Bernie Sanders. He's been in politics forever. He's not very corrupt. So they think that actually the term limit's actually a restriction and that they want to go back. Again, whatever. Why are we talking about this, and why am I saying this has been elevated from meme status, 4chan status, to potentially actually something in American politics? Well, it really comes down to J.D. Vance. So J.D. Vance used to not only work in Peter Thiel's venture capitalist network, he's also received quite a bit of money from Peter Thiel. And again, while Peter Thiel and Curtis Yarvin aren't like one and the same, they do seem to be a part of a similar brain trust, a similar movement, you could say, which is this kind of what I was just describing. So Vance has this kind of tie to them, and he's actually cited some of Yarvin's ideas. And what really crystallized this was Yarvin was at the inauguration gala, at President Trump's inauguration gala in January. So he was invited there, so which means that they know him. They're socializing together. They recognize him as a legitimate actor, right? Or he wouldn't be invited. And that kind of shows you that it's kind of elevated from just a dude online like me, frankly, to an actual person in, of the kind of circle, right, in the club. And that's different, right? And that's legitimate. And some of the stuff that Yarvin calls for, which is, again, just bureaucrats are incompetent, people are stupid, you're kind of seeing some of that kind of concepts actually kind of trickle through what is happening in the administration. Now, it's not at all clear that that's why. It's most likely because of what the Heritage Foundation / Project 2025 has put out. There isn't like a literal overlap between those two, but it's kind of like an indirect Venn diagram. They do just share some ambitions. Like, for example, the schedule effing of the civil service staff, right? So basically making it so you can fire everyone. Yarvin likes that. Heritage Foundation likes that. So it's happened, but again, likelier to be Heritage Foundation than Yarvin. Again, this just kind of widening voice of the people kind of getting this messaging out there. I mean, you're having people talk more about it. You're having Vance mentioning it on different interviews, podcast interviews, and stuff like that. And again, you're starting to see stuff with cities, just people like starting to think about cities more as like their own entities a little bit. Again, these are all kind of a stretch. I would say there's literally no direct evidence other than the inauguration invite and that Peter Thiel had like a party for Trump the day before inauguration that Yarvin was at, and actually Vance actually welcomed him in. So again, it's always hard to know when does a socializing kind of social group actually triculate into, legitimate policy, like we've seen with Project 2025, where we've seen, actual Heritage Foundation people get put into the administration, the Russ Voughts, the E.J. Antonis, the, Caroline Levitts, these kind of people. And again, this is just, I feel like it goes without saying this is a crazy idea, in my opinion, right? I mean, there's plenty of high-capacity democracies in the world. Look at the Nordic countries. I mean, you could even look at our countries. I vehemently disagree with the concept that, the country should be left run like a company. I mean, look at how companies are going. What about collective goods, right? What about roads? What about parks? Their idea doesn't really work on a bigger country, right? Because the bigger the space, the more collective goods. Who handles Wi-Fi? Who handles, international movements? How do, international policy get set? How does any of this happen? Is it just several tiny little countries? That doesn't always work. But if we want to keep an eye on this, because like I said, it is becoming more and more real and the country is getting more and more dystopian, frankly. So, we should take a look. Are we going to hear more interviews with them mentioning these guys? Or is there going to be more staffing people who have ties to these guys? Are we seeing kind of more funding, more donations, more think tanks, more policy pipelines with this type of, referencing? Then yeah, it's something that we should keep an eye on. I think these are the guys that it's too early to call it a direct influence, even though I'm sure some of you may think that, but it is something that, it's in the orbit now, right? And because of how kind of ominous their viewpoint of how the country should be run is, it's something definitely worth paying attention to. But I would definitely put it under the panic button when compared to the Heritage Foundation or just the general sanity of the country in sum. And that's our show, folks. Thank you so much for listening today. If you like the show, please give it a 5-star review, either on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. If you're on YouTube, give me a comment, like, share, subscribe, all that crap. It really, really helps, and I really appreciate everyone who's done it. Again, sorry to start the show so somber, but literally the news was breaking as I sat down to record this, and, I feel like I do now have a little bit of a platform, and we should all be condemning political violence, no matter what. And, frankly, I was sad that when the Minnesota state senators got, assassinated, I was furious that the right didn't care as much as I wish they would. I wish Trump had gone to the funeral and he didn't, and we should keep that same, it's different, but we should keep that same energy because No country should do this. This is so insane. And frankly, it's horrible, 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 horrible. And this shouldn't be how a country runs in 2025 or at all. And people are nuts. We'll be back Sunday to talk more about it with Rick. I'm, interested to see what he thinks about all this and all the other news events of the week. So join in then if you want to hear what we have to say. So yeah, I'll talk to you then. Bye.